Shalom. First and foremost, all praise, glory, and honor be to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Rahakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS, better known as Great Millstone, who rule well. And as always, we give peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect. And I'm your brother Matazabath, checking in again with another lesson. And this is going to be entitled Dreadlocks, the True Origins, or something to that effect. And for those of you brothers who've seen the TikTok posts that I've done pertaining to this controversial topic, this lesson is going to be a more in-depth because there's not a lot of videos on YouTube's with a lot of brothers' accounts being taken down and lessons have been deleted, from Esau, Edom. So, and myself included, I have not had a proper lesson going into this topic on my actual channel. So I'm going to take the opportunity through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemel Shah to quickly do this in-depth lesson dealing with dreadlocks and was it a custom of the Israelites. Now, for those of you brothers and sisters who've seen the post that I've done on TikTok, that was just a brief introduction of a basic breakdown. All right. In this lesson, we're going to do a more in-depth breakdown because there's a lot of things that we have to go into pertaining to etymology of words and history. All right. Now, I want to start off with this image here because this is the latest modern depiction of a Danite, all right, a man from the tribe of Dan whose name was Samson. And they will always tell you that Samson had dreadlocks, all right, because you have to understand, being in today's world, a lot of things are taken out of context and without the true understanding of the essence of origins of words and knowing the actual customs and the history, all right, going back to the ancient world, all right, you won't really understand the truth. Now, this was a series that came out back in 2013 called the Bible Story or the Bible series, something to that effect. And basically, we hear this time and time again when you read Judges, the 16th chapter. All right, it talks about Samson having, locks, right? So what I wanted to do was I wanted to start off with history. All right, now this is from the website edu.jmu.edu. All right, and I want to show you why this is caused such a big stir and why you have a lot of brothers that when they first come into the truth, they hear, Samson had dreads and therefore I'm going to keep my dreads. I don't have to cut them and this and a third, not understanding where it actually stemmed from and why. So we're going to read this and then we're going to get some edification. Now, this says here, it is very commonplace to see Rastas, all right, with dreadlocks. All right. So this is going into your Rastafarian, dealing with, your so-called Jamaicans, all right, West Indies today, which will be from the tribe of Benjamin, right? So it says, it is important to keep in mind, however, that not all Rastas have locks and not all locksmen are Rastas. It is just a common characteristic among Rastas symbolizing deep devotion to the holy God. And this is where they go off. It says Rastas view locks as having biblical origin. And in the Old Testament, there are many references to locks. And see, this is why if we get a precept, and we bring this out all the time, when you go to Ecclesiasticus, the first chapter, and you deal with the prelude, all right, to dealing with the translation of the scriptures from the Hebrew tongue, all right, when you read the Bible verbatim, all right, a lot of people tend to take what the scripture says out of context because you have to remember the Bible was translated 4 different times. You had it translated originally from the Hebrew tongue to the Greek tongue to the Latin Vulgate and then from the Latin Vulgate to the English. So with the process of time, you'll have something that's called lost in translation, right? And the scriptures goes on to tell you that here. It says, for the same things uttered in Hebrew and translated into another tongue, meaning another language, have not the same force in them. And not only these things, but the law itself, all right, meaning that the law itself doesn't come across in its original tongue. It doesn't have the same force in it. And the prophets, when you read about the prophets and their sayings and the rest of the books have no small difference when they are spoken in their own language. And this is why you have to revert back to going into the root word, going into the origin of the word, right? So going back here, it says Rastas relate locks to the Nazarite vow described in their earlier parts of the Old Testament, which we're going to go into that. It says, all the days of the vow of the separation, there shall no razor come upon his head until the days are fulfilled, for which he separated himself to the Lord. He shall be holy and shall let the locks of his hair of his head grow. It says Samson is the classic example of this relation. Samson's mother was visited by, they have here Jah, but his name is Yahweh, and was told, for lo, thou shalt conceive and bear a son, and no razor shall come on his head, for the child shall be a Nazarite unto the Most High from the womb, Salaki, I said moon, slip of the tongue, and he shall begin to deliver Israel out of the hands of the Philistine, right? So goes on to say here that from this verse, one can see how Rastas have determined that dreadlocks are part of the holy Nazarite vow, as Samson has 7 locks, right? And it's also, and this is me speaking as a man now, it's funny how, certain men can look at that particular verse and take it out of context and thinking that they are on some spiritual thing, but then at the same time, they're defiling their bodies, their temples, by smoking weed, drinking this and that. But here it is, they're supposed to be on some spiritual journey. It just goes to show you that the Heavenly Father's not dealing with that. So I'll leave this link in a post production in the comment sec. Actually, I'll leave it in the little description box. So if you guys want to read this, you can. Now, going into that, let's start off with that particular verse. So if we go to Numbers, the 6th chapter. All right, let's get straight to the point. Verse 5. It says, all the days of the vow of his separation, there shall no razor come upon his head until the days be fulfilled, right? So let's stop right there. A lot of brothers, they don't understand that even when being a Nazarite, you still had to undertaking that vow. You had a expiration date or when that vow would actually be completed. All right. So it wasn't like you would be a Nazarite from the time that you're born up until the time that you die. OK, now it goes on to say, in the which he separated himself unto the Lord Yahweh, he shall be holy and shall let the locks of the hair of his head grow. Now, once again, remember, the same things uttered in Hebrew, but translated into another tongue have not the same force in them, right? Now, when you read this verse and you look at it verbatim, reading it verbatim, Salakia, and you see the word locks, people automatically jump to conclusion and assume that it's talking about dreadlocks, right? So this is one of those situations where we have to go into the word, the Hebrew word for the word locks, right? Which is this, parah.
Strong's H, 6545. Perra.
All right. It's actually pronounced parah. Now, it says here, hair, long hair of head, locks. But then it also says the hair as disheveled. You see? Now, this is where we have to dig deeper and start pulling out these words right now. When you look up the word disheveled, okay, let's do it here first. All right. It says here, of a person's hair, clothes, or appearance, untidy, disordered, right? It says the original sense was having the hair uncovered, later referring to the hair itself hanging loose, hence disordered, untidy. Okay, so it's not in this sense, when you go into the root etymology, it's not talking about a person that actually has dreadlocks, but rather somebody that has a disheveled hair. So now let's go into the root etymology, right? Let's go into the word disheveled. All right, disheveled. It says also disheveled, early 15th century, without dressed hair. So hair that is not kept, right? Now it says here, adjective, bareheaded, late 14th century, bareheaded with shaving head. okay, to disarrange the hair. All right, if you drop down, it says here of the hair itself hanging loose and throw about in disorder, right? So in other words, basically, it just means untidied hair, all right? Something that's in a disorder, right? So now, going back, Salakia, let's go from there. So now let's go to the word locks, right? Now, when you scroll down, because there's different meanings for the word locks, this is the one we want here. Now, at the top here, all right, it says tress of hair, okay? Ringlet, lock. Now, where can we find this in the scripture when it says tress of hair, ringlet, a lock? Now, let's get the precept and let's go to Samson. Let's get Judges, the 16th chapter, right around the 13th verse. And it reads, it says, and Delilah said unto Samson, hitherto thou hast mocked me and told me lies. Tell me wherewith thou mightest be bound. And he said unto her, if thou weavest the 7 locks of my head with the web. Now, what you're going to realize here in this particular verse, we have a different Hebrew word for the word locks as opposed to what we read in Numbers, the 6th chapter, dealing with the Nazirite vow. And here's the proof. When you go into the Strong's Concordance and you look up the word or the phrase, the 7 locks, you have the Hebrew word mahalapa, right? And it says here, a braid, lock, plait. You see? Now, interesting. Remember, we looked up the word locks. It says Strong's definition, mahalapa, a ringlet of hair, as gliding over each other. So really, Brown's Driver Briggs Lexicon says what? It's a plait, which proves what? Samson didn't have dreads. He had plait of hair or braids, right? So now let's go into the root etymology of the word lock, right? Lock, noun 2, it says tress of hair, lock of hair, curl. You see? That's what lock means, a tress of hair. It didn't say for it to just be matted down or whatever the case may be. No, a lock is just a tress of hair that's basically curled. Now, what's interesting about this, if we go into the commentary, all right, which I like to do from time to time, separate the meat from the bone. And we go into that particular verse. Okay. It says here, this part right here, braids or tresses into which, like many in the East, showing you that this was an ancient custom in the East back then, he chose to plait his hair because this was very common in the East, plaiting of hair or braids. Didn't say anything about dreadlocks. You see? Now notice you have the word braids and then you have tresses. And we read when we looked up the word locks, okay, or lock, a tress of hair, which means to curl. Now, if you look up the word tress, okay, it says here, lock, long lock of hair, all right, from the old French tresse, a plait or braid of hair, okay? That's what it means to have of tress of hair, okay? Not for it to be in a form of a dreadful look, just letting it be matted down and just letting it overgrow. You see? Now let's look up the word curl, because remember, in lock just simply means a lock of hair that is curled. Now, if we go into the etymology of the word curl, right, it says here to turn, bend, form in ringlets. You see? Ringlets, right? That's all it means. So moving down, it says intransitive sense of take the form of a curl, assume a spiral shape, originally of hair. So what would be, or actually, yep, you have here, curl, 1600, a ringlet of hair, right? So what would be an example of that? Well, if we go back to our image, here you have a brother who has disheveled, untidy, unkempt hair, all right, form into curls, ringlets. So this would have been a more depiction of what men back then, taking that Nazarite vow, what their hair would have looked like. Now, it would have been in this form, or they would have had it braided or plaited. This is not simply saying that they had dreadlocks. No, because when you go into the root etymology of words, which what is the word etymology means when you look it up? Okay, etymology, facts of the origin and development of a word. Okay, analysis of a word to find its true origin, the study of the true sense of a word. This is the reason why I'm beginning with the apostles on down. They are the ones through the spirit and the power of Yahweh Bashim Rashad that have taught us the importance of looking up words. So be that it may, okay, this was an ancient custom in the East. Okay, as you, Salakia, read it again, it says braids or tresses into which, like many in the East, okay, meaning what? Many people in the East, all right, took on this custom. He chose to plait his hair. This wasn't something new. You see? Now, going back to here, okay, I found this article here, instantwahair.com. Need to know the difference between locks and dreadlocks. All right, now this was published on March 14, 2022. So let's just drop down straight to the point. We'll read this. It says the history of different hairstyles spans multiple cultures through thousands of years. A hairstyle isn't just a fashion statement. It's also a part of who you are and where you come from. Knowing the differences between locks and dreadlocks isn't just about what they look like. It's also about their meaning and cultural of origin. And some people think dreads are simply matted hair that was left to grow out with little care, but in fact, dreadlocks often hold spiritual meaning for the wearer, and that goes under a heathen custom, and we'll show you. It says, let's look and see what locks and dreadlocks are from a physical and historical standpoint. Now it says here, what are locks? Now remember, we're taking the meat from the bone, okay? Meaning you take what you know to be true based off, the true essence of the word and based off history and the scriptures. Now it says here, locks are an African hairstyle, right? Which Israelites are not African, okay? Israelites are Shemitic, they're not Hemitic. So it says locks are an African hairstyle that consists of hair strands that have been coiled, braided, twisted, or palm rolled to create a rope-like appearance. Now, something that stood out to me, when you go into the word coil, right? It says here, arrange something long and flexible in a coil, all right? Move or twist into the shape of a coil. Now, here where it says similar, all right, you have your synonyms. You have wind, loop, twist, curl, right? And remember, we looked up the word curl, which is simply a ringlet of hair, spiral, coiled, which goes back to what? This individual right here, disheveled, unkempt, curly hair, right? So going back to the article, it says locks are an so-called African hairstyle that consists of hair strands that have been coiled, braided, twisted, or palm rolled to create a rope-like appearance. Locks stem as far back in history as ancient Greece, and they are correct, because what was depicted in ancient Greece, you had something that was called, let's pull up another tab here, Minoans of Crete. And let's see if we can get an image. Because the Minoans, they wore dreads. And here's one right here. They twisted their hair, all right? And let's see if we can get a better depiction. because, you know, Google, and no, they were not Caucasian. They were actually dark skinned. They are your so-called Polynesians today. But Minoans, they had, here, we'll just get this. So basically they had curly hair. They had dreads. All right. Like, as you can see here, there's a better depiction. They had tresses of hair. Okay. They had, matter of fact, to make it even better for you brothers and sisters, let me just go to the website here. Let's go to Real World History, WW. Salakia. This phone don't want to work. Here we go. This is what I want. Now, if we go into Minoan, okay, and we get Pelasgians, all right, which were also, you know, Cretians, all right. There you go. As you can see there, all right, they had locks, braids. Sometimes they will grow their hair out to be matted into dreads. All right, here's a woman right here. Okay, as you can see, the tresses of hair in the back, right? All right, and here's another depiction. All right, the Minoans, which are your true Grecians. All right, they had you know, dreads of hair, and here's another depiction. All right, they would grow out their hair into the form of what you will call today dreadlocks. All right, that was an ancient custom that they would do, and also the ancient Egyptians. All right, when you type in, let's go back. If you type in, let's say, ancient Egyptian dreadlocks, right? Now it says here, Egyptian dreadlocks. Egypt has a rich history of dreadlocks dating back to as far as 3100 BC. Ancient Egyptian sculptures, statues, and other archaeological discoveries in the region over the years have provided evidence of dreadlocks' historical roots in ancient Egypt. So as you can see right off the bat, it's really a heathen custom. It has nothing to do with the custom of the Israelites, right? So going back here to the article, it says here, now this is where they go off, because they said locks stem as far back in history as ancient Greece. People of various cultures and religions, such as Hindus and ancient Israelites, have worn locks, right? But we looked up the word locks, and it doesn't mean dreadlocks. All right, it simply just means a ringlet of curls. It says this hairstyle is easier to create on Nubian or African hair than on straight Caucasian hair, and it prevents the strands from losing moisture and can last for a very long time. Now that's going into locks. Now here, what are dreadlocks? Dreadlocks have an extensive history in many cultures. American culture has misinterpreted and appropriated the term dread as meaning dreadful. But those who wear dreadlocks in other cultures are traditionally seen as warriors. When enslaved people were transported overseas from Africa, they were unable to properly care for their hair. As a result, natural locks came to be. People also began to wear dreadlocks in Jamaica Rastafarian tradition beginning in the 1930s, and that's where it actually started to catch wave. It says Western culture eventually influenced these practices, and people of African or Nubian descent adopted dreadlocks as their own, right? Because when Esau puts out the narrative, which, what is a narrative? Right? What's a narrative? All right. It says biographical, historical, to tell, relate, recount, explain, meaning of, or pertaining to a narration, right? Basically, it's a tale, a story. Okay. And what is a tale? When you look up the word tale, the etymology, all right, a tale is a fable, fiction, meaning it's not real. Accusation, action of telling. Okay. Fable. This is the point of looking up words. Fable is what? Falsehood, fictitious narrative, a lie, pretense. And the lie was that they tried to put you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans into the category, especially you Negroes, as being so-called Africans. So that's the reason why when our brothers go into the whole Egyptology, the whole worship of the Nubian princess and all of that stuff, you think you are those people. You are not those people. You're not Hamites. And this is the importance of looking up your words. So, all right, it says Western culture eventually influenced these practices, and people of African or Nubian descent adopted dreadlocks as their own. You see, they adopted it as their own, right? So that's pretty much I wanted to get off that. So we'll end it on this here. So now let's go to Ezekiel, the 44th chapter, because this was not a custom of ours. All right. We were to keep ourselves clean. This is Ezekiel 44 and 20. It says, neither shall they shave their heads, nor suffer their locks to grow long. You see? So any of you brothers that have these long dreadlocks, okay, first off, you're not supposed to be having no dreadlocks. That is not an ancient custom of Israel. Israel had ringlets of hair. They had hair that was either plaited or braided. All right. But then we were to poll, as it says here, they shall only poll their heads, meaning to trim. Now, when you go into the word locks, for instance, here, all right, you have the same Hebrew word found in the Nazarite vow in Numbers, the 6th chapter, parah, which means disheveled hair. So in the case of this brother here, let's say your hair grew out more than what you see here in this picture. Eventually, you were supposed to trim it because you had something. Salakia, let's go back here. Let's go to the text commentary just to prove a point, right? And let's look up, let me see here. I think it was Matthew. I'll show you something real quick. Yep. Now, reading this, it says, concerning their hair, and that they must avoid extremes on both hands. They must not shave their heads. Why? Because it goes back to a Gentile priest, going really back to the ancient Egypt. That's why when we came out of ancient Egypt, we was told not to, thou shalt not suffer baldness upon thy heads. That's Leviticus, the 21st chapter. That's why we're not supposed to shave our head completely bald. But it says they must not shave their heads in imitation of the Gentile priest, and as the priest of the Romish church do, nor on the other hand must they suffer their locks to grow long, meaning their disheveled, untidy hair, as to view, or that they might be thought Nazarites when they really were not. But they must be grave and modest, you see, and must poll their heads and keep their hair short. If a man, especially a minister, wear long hair, it is not becoming, meaning it's frowned upon. All right, 1 Corinthians 11 and 14. Doth not nature itself teaching you that it is a shame for a man to have long hair, and it is effeminate. Okay, effeminate, when you look at the word up. All right. Let's go here to the second one. Right. Effeminate, having characteristics and ways of behaving traditionally associated with women and regarded as inappropriate for a man. That's why a lot of you brothers, when you have this long hair and stuff, all right, see, the women, they're supposed to have long hair because that's their glory. But you being a man, all right, you're not supposed to have long hair. You see? Because even when you get, let's get a precept, let's go to Absalom, right? When you deal with Absalom, let's see here. I think it's, let me see. Nope, I had it right. Salakia. When you go back dealing with Absalom and his hair, type it in. It's not coming up. Salakia. Let me see here. No, so it must be this. Just bear with me real quick. Let me just find this precept. Yep, here it is right here, Salakia, for that. So when you deal in the case with Absalom, all right, this is 2 Samuel chapter 14 and verse 25. It says, "But in all Israel there was none to be so much praised as Absalom for his beauty. From the sole of his foot even to the crown of his head, there was no blemish in him. And when he polled his head, meaning he trimmed, for it was at every year's end that he polled it, because the hair was heavy on him. Therefore he polled it. He weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels after the king's weight." You see, and that's a lot of hair. So what ended up happening to him when you fast forward 2 Samuel, all right, chapter 18 and verse 9. This is the reason why Apostle Paul made the statement in 1 Corinthians, the 11th chapter, "Doth not nature itself teaches you that it is a shame for a man to have long hair?" All right, because read the account of what happened to Absalom. 2 Samuel 18 and 9. "And Absalom met the servants of David, and Absalom rode upon a mule, and the mule went under the thick boughs of a great oak, and his head got caught hold of the oak, and he was taken up between the heaven and the earth, and a mule that was under him went away." So his hair got caught under an oak tree, right? "And a certain man saw it and told Joab and said, Behold, I saw Absalom hanging in the oak." So what ended up happening? Drop down to verse 14. "Then said Joab, I may not tarry thus with thee. And he took 3 darts in his hand and thrust them through the heart of Absalom while he was yet alive in the midst of the oak." See, he was still hanging by his hair, man. Imagine that, because you had that long hair. And now when you jump to 1 Corinthians, the 11th chapter, verse 14, this is why Apostle Paul said what he said. It said, "Doth not even nature itself teach you?" The key part here is nature, dealing with the scene of Absalom being caught under that oak tree. "Doth not nature itself teach you that if a man have long hair, it is a shame unto him?" What is the Greek word for shame?
Strong's G 819. Atamia. Atamia.
Okay, which goes into dishonor. Okay, ignominy, disgrace, vile, reproach, shameful. Okay, because one, we are supposed to put a difference between the holy and the unholy, between the clean and the unclean. And when you look up, let's see if we can find this, and we'll end it on this right here. Let's look up Gentile priest having long hair. Let me see what they have on this. Let's type it in. Egyptian, because there was an article that I seen about going into this. Right. Yeah, here we go, right here. Right. Hair, gender, Salakia, all these damn things popping up. Hair, gender, and social status in ancient Egypt. Let's see here. Let's get straight to the point. Let me look this up real quick. Let's see. Yep. Here we go right here. It says, elite men's sons were junior in rank to their fathers, both in the family and in the broader society. That lesser status shows up in the chapels where sons are shown wearing either a short, round wig or a shaven head. Less hair could signify subservient status, whether to a god or mortal master. As priests and household servants were shown with shaven heads, when a priest took on a son's metaphoric role in a rite, he wore a wig with a side lock. Okay, so let's see, it says, in contrast to men's shorter locks, both elite women and female household servants were distinguished by long hair falling below the shoulders, often to breast level. Women wore their own hair long, even beneath wigs, and are shown with short hair mainly in devotional contexts, right? But let's see if they got anything else on that. Because both men and women wore wigs. All right. And this was an Egyptian custom. That's why today a lot of our women, they wear, weaves and stuff, because this actually goes back to ancient Egypt, wearing all those different wig styles and stuff like that, showing you that we are back in spiritual Egypt. It says, human hair provides an excellent canvas for self-expression, but not everyone can be very flexible in their choice of hairstyle. That was true in ancient Egypt, where depictions of hair reflected social status and idolized identities of men, women, and children. You see? And there it is. Okay? As the scripture says, there is no new thing under the sun. All right? And this was September 11, 2020, man. All right? So the same thing that was going on in ancient Egypt is the same thing that's going on again here in Babylon the Great, this spiritual Egypt, man. And a lot of our women, Eve, is at the forefront of wearing these box braids and all of that stuff, which the scriptures tells you, all right, when you get, what's that, 2 Peter 3, Salakia, or is it 1 Timothy? It's a lot. I always get a little bit confused with this one. No, it was 1 Peter. Yep. 1 Peter 3. Start at the top. It says, likewise, you wives, be in subjection to your own husbands, that if any obey not the word, they also may without the word be won by the conversation of the wives, while they behold your chaste conversation coupled with fear, whose adorning, let it not be that outward adorning of plaiting the hair and of wearing of gold or of putting on an apparel. And why does it say of the plaiting of the hair? Because they were dressing their hair, putting all of these sort of ornaments in there. All right. And basically, when you go into the history, it was dealing with customs of the other heathen nations. That's why a lot of our women today, they take pride in, bleaching their hair, wearing wigs, putting blonde, making their hair blonde, putting colors in it, all different sorts of style. But when you go into the customs in the ancient world, those were heathenistic customs. Because remember, according to Ezekiel, the 44th chapter, verse 23, it says what? And they shall teach my people the difference between the holy and the profane, and cause them to discern between the unclean and the clean. We are not to take on the ways of the heathen. This is Jeremiah 10:2. It says, thus said the Lord Yahweh, learn not the way of the heathen, and be not dismayed at the signs of heaven, for the heathen are dismayed at them. For the customs of the people are vain, right? Which this goes into, dealing with the tree, which to this, in this modern time, you call it Christmas. All right, that whole Christmas tree, and our people is at the forefront, okay, when they take on the identity of heathen custom, man. So that's pretty much it. There's nothing else that I really need to go into. Hopefully this lesson has been edifying, but now this was not a custom of ours, man. And you have people today that will associate what they think, because the way that they've read it and taken it out of context, and also dealing with particular things that happened in history, like the whole Rastafarian movement in the 1930s and stuff, and them taking on the likeness of depicting dreadlocks to be a spiritual thing. You have to keep things into their proper perspective and know what they go back to. Now, also, I'll say this. That's another thing I wanted to bring up. The water Yahweh Bashmi Shai. Now, when you go into the history, all right, really, this stems all the way back to East India, all right, which are your Elamites today. It says many historians believe that India can be credited for the religious origins of dreadlocks. In fact, the Hindu holy scriptures, the Vedas, which was written in India between 1500 to 1000 BCE, provides the first written historical evidence of dreadlocks. The key part here is it provides the first written. It's not talking about images or sculptures like we saw dealing with the Minoan artwork and stuff like that, proving that even the ancient Greeks, which are your Minoans, Ionians, they had, plaits, braids, and dreads, even the ancient Egyptians, right? Which I don't even think I proved that, but in case if I didn't, all right, there you go. All right, ancient Egyptian. All right, look at the hairstyle that they had. All right, boom. And really, she just has ringlets of curls, man. Okay, but they wore wigs and stuff like that. Okay, it was a custom of theirs. You see, it was a custom. All right, and we're not Hamites, we're Shemites. All right, so we didn't have our hair like that, man. But anyway, so going back to here. All right. It says the Vedas, which was written in India between 1500 to 1000 BCE, provides the first written historical evidence of dreadlocks. Historically, in India culture, locks were widely regarded as sacred by Hindu holy men and signified their willingness to disregard vanity for their god. The Hindu deity Shiva is also described in many scriptures as wearing dreadlocks, which is referred to as Jada. The story of Ganga, the Hindu goddess of purification in the Ganges River, is one of the most notable narratives that have a mention of Shiva wearing dreadlocks. Hindus believe that Shiva released water through his locks of hair to prevent Earth's destruction. And some of Shiva's followers throughout history are also believed to have worn dreadlocks, which were often kept up and only let down for religious events. See, this is the reason why we don't wear dreadlocks, because it's a heathen custom. It goes back to the worship of Shiva. Look that up, So, as you can see, the importance of going into history, the importance of going into root etymology of words. Samson did not have dreadlocks, man. Okay, so this image right here will be a false image of what Samson really had, because he would have probably had something to this extent, which his wife Delilah at that time would have just simply plaited or braided. Okay, when we went into the Hebrew word mahalapa, right? So, yeah, that's it on that. And, Yahweh Ratazah, Lord willing, this lesson was edifying. And hopefully you brothers and sisters got a little bit more clarification. All right, going into a more in-depth lesson dealing with dreadlocks, and was it an Israelite custom? And the answer is no, it was not a custom of ours. So with that, I want to give all praise, glory, and honor to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Makakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of GMS, better known as Great Millstone, who rule well. Peace and salutations unto the hopeful elect. Till next time, Shalom.
108. O God, my heart is fixed. I will sing and give praise even with my glory. Awake psaltery and harp. I myself will awake early. I will praise thee, O Lord, among the people.